Hello and welcome to the Winning Post, and for those of you who are expecting to see your regular programming today, well, we're not going to go there, at least not for a while, because with me in Australia, which is where I am right now, I have a very special guest. For those of you who have been racing for many, many years, the Sangster name is a name that every racing fan will relate to. Well, I'm in Australia with Robert Sangster's son, Adam Sangster. Adam, thank you so much for hosting us and actually sitting with us, because this is a fantastic moment, especially for so many viewers who would love to know so much more about your life and that of your father's.
Mo, thank you for coming down to Swettenham in Australia. You're up here in Ngambie in the northeast of Victoria, and absolutely love to talk about my great father's life and what really the Sangster family are up to in 2009.
All right, let's start with your great father. Now, of course, most of us have read the book Horse Trader, and we all know it well, but he was brilliant. Tell us about him.
He was a wonderful man. I mean, sorely missed. Sadly, he passed away in April 2004, but he put a lot of good years in, I've got to say. I mean, he was a great father, and he basically produced I've got two older brothers, a sister, two half-brothers, and he was a great family man, and we enjoyed a lot of him, and he did look after us particularly well, and I'll touch on a lot of good racing stories, which I'm sure, I mean, you told me that you were in 1977, you were at Epsom when yeah. Leicester managed to get home the Minstrel over Hot Grove on that great day. So you were there, I was at school, we were both in short trousers, but we're the same age, so yeah, I'm sure we've got a lot to talk about.
Now, growing up with a man like Robert Sangster, lived life to its fullest. What was that like?
Tough question, but I'd tell you, it's with that question, growing up with my father, I mean, it was the most exciting. I mean, every hemisphere, sorry, not every hemisphere, every country he was participating in racing, and around the dinner table we'd have the most interesting collection of characters. I mean, going from racing characters to car racing characters to people involved in wine, people involved in hotels, and then the next day, you'd get a phone call from a trainer who said that he'd have a horse which was running in France or Ireland, or even locally in the Isle of Man, say, and we'd hop on a plane. He had a fleet of aeroplanes, which were based out of Liverpool, which is where he originally came from, and grandfather Vernon was a particularly strong grandfather, and he really set us up in the Vernon's Pools side of things, which was the football pools, and my father really sort of he was, as I say, he was a very, very close family orientated person who loved life and loved people being around him, and I've got to say that I was lucky I was born in the right cult.
Absolutely, you were. Now, let's talk about the Minstrel. You mentioned him earlier. Now, he was a strange purchase to begin with, because he looked nothing like his brother Nijinsky, and he was small. He was a flashy chestnut with 4 white socks and a white blaze, but you guys had to have him.
Yeah, Dad always did relate to this horse. When he was purchased, I know that when they first went to America and they did purchase this first group of yearlings out of Keeneland, that he was a horse which really sort of needed. He ran in the Guineas, and he came third. And Leicester said in his own way, I'm not even going to try and imitate Leicester because he was such a great man. And Leicester said this horse will stay in the Derby, and he convinced Dad and Vincent that we should run the Minstrel in the Derby. And he said he'll certainly suit the undulating ground at Epsom. He was right.
And it's Hotgrove from the Minstrel, brushing Grove and Monseigneur. 100 yards to run in the derby. The Minstrel coming to challenge Hotgrove. And it's Lester Piggott and Willie Carson. The Minstrel on the near side, Hotgrove on the north side. And the Minstrel wins it from Hotgrove, brushing from it.
This is a bust, by the way, for our viewers back home, of Robert Sangster, and this was gifted to you.
Yeah, this was gifted to me by the Hayes family, and the Hayes family are, I mean, synonymous to Australia. I mean, Colin Hayes was a great trainer at Lindsay Park, and his son David is one of my closest friends. And as a wedding gift, they didn't know what to give my wife Sophie and myself, so there's a bust of this of Colin Hayes at Morphettville in South Australia, and they thought, what a great gift to give to me and my wife for our wedding presents. And I've got to say, I do chat to him once in a while, because it's great to have a three-dimensional sort of bust of your father.
Let's come back to some of the racing stories. There's some great stories. Those silks are so famous, you know, the green, blue, and you know, I mean, it's just so famous. What's the feeling like every time you look at them?
It's a very personal feeling. Yeah, I do use them. I mean, when Dad passed, I was never not going to use them. The family were never not going to use them, and they are so distinctive, and they're so part of our heritage. And really, my mother, she designed them back in the mid-60s, and she thought green and blue. I mean, a lot of the artists and things say you shouldn't make green and blue are not a good combination, but actually in the mist, in the Midlands at Chester, my mother always said that really they'd stick out in the mist, and they did, and especially with Lester riding, because his riding style was very, very, very unique, and so he always managed to stand above most of the other jockeys. So yeah, great colours, and as you say, I am continuing them. I do race all the horses which we do down here in the Southern Hemisphere, especially Australia, in the Swettenham colours, Dad's colours, but in my wife's name.
All right, now let's talk about some of the other great horses. There have been so many. There was Assert, there was Alleged, there was Golden Fleece, and many believed Golden Fleece to be one of the greatest of all time.
Oh, he was a good-looking stallion. Great-looking horse. He had such presence. He was a real athlete, and he went into the Derby unbeaten. And Pat Edgery rode him and cruised to the front, and he retired as an unbeaten Derby winner, and sadly he died for unforeseen circumstances. He actually got cancer, which is very rare in a horse, which was a great loss to the family, but also to the breeding industry, because he would have been a great success in the breeding barn.
Son of Nijinsky, wasn't he?
Absolutely, and he had the pedigree. He won at 2. He did everything you needed at 3. He just had an acceleration which really was captured the imagination, and he was very close to my father. I know that, and it was a good combination, because that's when we just. Father took a lot of interest in the jockeys. He built up good relationships with them over the time, but of course he was the first person to bring Steve Cawthon across.
That's correct.
When Steve was only 19 years old, just after he'd won on Spectacular Bid, or a firm.
And a firm, yeah.
And then he bought Cash Ashminster over.
That's right.
I
remember that as well.
Yeah, he bought Brent Thompson across from Australia, and Brent is a very good friend. He's a great bloodstock agent. He brought Pat Edgery into the team, just to name a few. But I mean, he did get particular enjoyment out of those jockeys, but and obviously in consultation with his trainers, because Dad was always a gentleman who never interfered. He always used to have comments saying that if the passengers start flying the plane, we sort of may as well stop. But his comment would be, why go to a doctor without taking a prescription?
But he surrounded himself with the best people.
He did, and to the annoyance of others, I've got to say. I mean, he did, when he was buying the horses out of Kentucky year on year, we had our final sort of backstop was P.P. Hogan. Now, P.P. Hogan came from Ireland, and he couldn't read or couldn't write, but he knew his horses. And basically, Father used to say to Vincent, when you get to your short list of 10 colts, 10 fillies. So P.P. Hogan was an Irish gentleman. He was head of the hunt in Ireland, and a great character, but he was a great horseman. And his daughter used to work for us as well. But really what he'd do, he would, once he's been given the list of horses which Dad was going to purchase, he would be basically the last person. He'd go and have a look at them, and it was on his recommendation which Father would then go in and purchase these horses, bid.
And this was the Vincent O'Brien would give the short list over to PP.
Yeah, it was Vincent O'Brien, Tom Cooper, the great British bloodstock agent. There was Joss Collins. There was a big team involved, big team of vets, Stan Cosgrove, and obviously Vincent and John Magner. I mean, John Magner was a critical part of it all.
Absolutely.
And we had partners like Danny Schwartz and Stavros Niarchos. So, but these gentlemen really did lean on Father's last say, but Father did lean on
his team,
on Patrick Hogan.
We're going to take a very short break and come right back on the Winning Post, because we're going to come back and talk about, well, the team, those Coolmore days, those fantastic days, and your summit in the desert with, when they were buying Northern Dancer horses, as well as some of Robert Sangster's great moments. Stay tuned, we'll be right back on this very special episode of The Winning Post. Okay, welcome back to The Winning Post, and for those of you just joining us, we're in conversation with Adam Sangster, Robert Sangster's son. Without wasting any time, there's so much to learn from this man, and of course about his father's life. So we're going to continue with our conversation. When we last went to break, we talked about the team that Robert Sangster had put together, and how while his team depended on him, he depended on his team too. So it was a two-way street. Now let's come to those Coolmore days. Let's come to those. I mean, those have been documented in the book Horse Trader. It's glamorized, and it's exciting. I couldn't put the book down. So let's talk about those Coolmore days. What were those like for your father?
I know he enjoyed it enormously. I mean, he and Vincent, great pals, and then of course John Magner, who was Father's greatest pal, and the three of them just would really. I mean, John he knew his horses, he knew his pedigrees, he knew the background. Father was very much the businessman, but I mean, I've got to say, Vincent obviously was the trainer and the horseman. But the times they had and the success they had was global domination for a number of years. I think to date he's had 159 individual Group 1 winners, which he's bred or he's owned himself globally in 22 different countries. But he loved Vincent, and he loved how Vincent chose a horse, and he enjoyed John's business sort of acumen, and enjoyed playing golf with John. I mean, they were great pals and played golf everywhere. Well, I mean, Dad used to say that 90% of the deals he did were on a golf course. Right. And he played a lot with John Magner, so and that's probably why we were such good partners. But that partnership did last for a number of years, and they built up.
They built up a racing empire.
A massive racing empire. I mean, the horses which went through the stables at Ballydall were immense.
Now, of course, the book clearly documents the fact that they often got into bidding wars with the Godolphin team, or Sheikh Mohammed's team at the time, and there came a point when they actually met in the Middle East to actually say, look, what are we doing here? What do you know about that?
Well, I'll never forget Dad saying that when Sheikh Mohammed did call the office and asked to speak to Father and invite himself and John Magner out to Dubai, that when he arrived in Dubai, they got off the plane and all the lights were on green and went straight to the Sheikh Mohammed's palace. and sat down and had a very frank discussion, because really at that time the prices of these yearlings were going through the roof. They were having bidding wars against each other, which were, I mean, I think Snaffy Dancer was bought for 10.1 million in 1983, and I think the year after, 84 or 85, we outbid Sheikh Mohammed for Seattle Dancer, the northern out of my boopers, for 13.2 or
Something like that.
Something
That
it was
13 million in change.
Yeah, yes, and it was, you know, this is going back a number of years now, and it's so they did get together. They did have a talk. They did think that it was best to really sort of look at what yearlings each particular one wanted, and if they were very strong on it, their dad was a great person to say, "I'll toss you for it." So,
right.
so they would toss each other for it, and all their advisors would, and so the story goes, the market did actually crash. Well, not crash, but it came off the tops a little bit. And
it was corrected, really.
Corrected is the best summary. But in the book, The Horse Trader, I mean, I remember reading it for the first time, because there are a lot of, well, there were 4 books which were unauthorised, which were written about my father, and he got a little bit knocked off about it. So his best friend through the years was Nick Robinson, and Nick Robinson's my brother's godfather. He actually set up Pacemaker in England, and father said, "Well, Nick, come on, let's get the proper story out and write this book." So they got together, and over the course of a weekend, with a tape recorder in the middle of the table, wrote this. Well, talked about all the stories and how everything evolved.
Now, would you remember through his entire career which moment stood out most for him?
I remember the moment which stood out most, he always said to me he'd love to breed and own a Derby winner. And he did that here in Australia with a Danehill horse, which we bred out of a great family called Blackfriars. And Blackfriars won the Derby in 1999. And as a son, being based in Australia, running his empire, it was something which I know he always wanted to do, and to have his family around, which we were all there at the time, was a great tribute to him, and he enjoyed that horse. It was trained by the Hayes family. It was trained by the late Peter Hayes, and it was just a wonderful moment. But I'd say Dad did enjoyed Detroit. When she won the Arc for Critique Head, he enjoyed her because Detroit, it was a funny story behind Detroit. Detroit was bought by his long-time friend Billy McDonald, and Billy McDonald, who's represented in the Horse Trader book, who was Dad's Irish-American agent. A lot of fun, used to get into a lot of trouble with father, and he basically went into a paddock in Kentucky, and while they're walking towards the paddock with all the horses in, Billy, which we didn't know at the time, turned around to the stud groom and said, "Which is the fastest horse in the paddock?" and gave him $50. And he pointed, saying, "Listen, a little black filly with 3 white socks over there." And she was smallest in the paddock, and Billy stepped out and said, Robert, look at this filly over here, you should buy her." So he bought her, and she won an Arc. And she produced an Arc winner in Carnegie.
That's right.
So, and Dad got a lot of he was very proud of that, because Carnegie, he sold to Sheikh Mohammed. And to show what a decent, I mean, the father was a very decent man. Sheikh Mohammed, the year before, bought Carnegie's, who's Sadler's Wells, out of Detroit, bought Carnegie's older brother for a considerable amount of money. I think it was 4 million. In fact, it was 4 million. And he wasn't much good at all. So Dad said, "Well, listen, why not have the younger brother, and I'll sell it to you at 25 cents per dollar." And this horse proved that he was a significant horse, and was a very good sire as well. My father had a great relationship going back to Sheikh Mohammed. They enjoyed each other's company. A lot of competition there. I mean, Dad did like to beat him, but vice versa.
Well, and there are plenty more stories to come. We're going to take a very short break and come back on the Winning Post. So stay tuned, and I've got a surprise for you when you do come back. Welcome back to the Winning Post. I'm in conversation with Adam Sangster, Robert Sangster's son. Now, for those of you joining us or who have been with us, let me tell you, this is not the end of the interview, though we have just a few minutes left on the show today. This is going into two parts. So there's going to be a Winning Post Part 1 on this conversation and a Winning Post Part 2 the following week. So don't be worried. We're enjoying this conversation and we're going to see it through to its logical conclusion. Adam, coming back to your dad, we'll deal with your dad on this episode and come to your life in the next one since we've decided to go for two. Now, the part that I want to touch upon, the divorce, when your parents got divorced, that must have been difficult.
Yeah, that was, I mean, we, the three of us, my brothers, my two older brothers and myself, we had a very young sister as well, she was only 2. Yeah, it was very difficult. Our mother was particularly, she would be particularly upset, but she did take on the 4 of us and really left my father to enjoy what he wanted to go out and do. He was setting up an empire and was very much in the middle of an empire, and this empire now stretched to Australia, where he had married his second wife, Susan Renouf, who's then Susan Peacock, and really it was a tough time for the whole family and everybody involved. And actually from then on, my mother actually never went to a racecourse ever since.
And she didn't want you to ever get to racing either?
No, she didn't. She really didn't. She didn't feel that it wasn't probably an easy way to meet the right girl, because she said that sometimes you could have been horse people can be a little bit narrow-minded, and you needed to get out and actually get a little bit more experience in the world, whether or not it's finance or trying a different trade or visiting a different country for a long period of time. She certainly didn't want us to get involved in racing, although after a few years, I mean, she got me very much involved in finance, and then I got involved in racing.
All right, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to end this episode of The Winning Post. This is part 1, Robert and Adam Sangster, and we're going to see you next week. Thank you so much for being with us today. Do tune in next week because there's plenty more on Robert Sangster and Adam Sangster.